It's time to find out how I really feel about Zack Snyder. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel, and welcome back to another tier list. Today, we're talking about Zack Snyder. We've done numerous tier lists on this channel, from Denis Villeneuve to most recently, the DC Extended Universe movies. But right now, we're going to talk about a director who is known for his visual styles and just came out with 2 movies in Army of the Dead and his version of Justice League. We're going to talk about all of these things, but I need you guys down below. Start a discussion, and please leave me your favorite Zack Snyder movie. We may have some surprising comments, some surprising number ones, and I'll admit, my list may be a bit different than yours, but it's not the definitive list. These are just my opinions, and opinions that I am very excited to share with you guys, because I've not really talked about Zack Snyder all that much. And going back through these films, I think I learned a thing or two about myself. I'm a bigger Zack Snyder fan than even I knew. We're going to get into it. We're going to talk about it. Drop your thumbs up down below if you want me to do another tier list after this, and let me know. What should I do? Let's do it. All right, Superman, Man of Steel. You guys have heard me talk about this movie so much. That's why I put it first on the list, so I don't have to go back through all of the things that I've said about this film before. Look, this is my definitive Superman movie. I hold this thing in such high regard. I think it is a great showcase of what the character is, what he could have or still could become. We kind of saw the culmination of a lot of those things in his Justice League movie, but overall, I believe this is a really great attempt at bringing Superman to the big screen in a very different way. And I've always said, you know, he may not be the same Superman that a lot of people knew and grew up with, and it's a lot darker, but he's still learning how to be Superman in this film, learning how to become the hero that we all hold in such high regard. And me, you know, being a Superman fan, but not the biggest Superman fan prior to this film, this movie did a lot for me, especially growing up with it and really not coming entirely around on it, but I appreciate this film a lot more now than I did when I first saw it in the theater because I've watched it so many times. I believe Man of Steel is a great movie, and you guys know that because, again, I've talked about it a lot, but Henry Cavill is my Superman, and Zack Snyder did an incredible job with this visually stunning movie, and of course, Hans Zimmer's score, one of the best scores ever, in my opinion. Legends of the Guardians, the Owls of Ga'Hoole, is okay. I'm going to put it on the okay tier. This film is really divisive for some reason. You have a lot of people who just love it, and they're like, it's a very underrated Zack Snyder movie. And then you have a lot of people who are just, it's not for me, right? I'm kind of in the middle of all of that. I think there's a lot of good in this film. Some good that doesn't necessarily know who or what its audience is, right? It's visually stunning. Again, you're going to see the reoccurring thing for all these movies. Visually stunning. That's what Zack Snyder does. For me, the story did not quite live up to the way that it looked, but it was really cool seeing these owls go into battle and kind of an animated film reminiscent to the style of a 300 with owls, with so many unexpected elements, characters that were slightly compelling, not overly compelling, but a movie that doesn't necessarily know if it wants to appeal towards adults or kids. I think that's probably the biggest fault, and it's not necessarily a movie that I think of when I think of Zack Snyder. That's not a bad thing, of course, and that's why I believe this is okay, because there is so much in there for you to still sink your teeth into, or dig your owl claws into. I'm stupid. But it's okay nonetheless. Dawn of the Dead is more than okay. Dawn of the Dead is a film that I was so excited to go back and revisit. And a few weeks, maybe a month or two back, I was on a podcast. It's called the Intercut Podcast with Art and Zach. And Zach asked me to be on. If you guys don't know Art, he is Let Me Explain on YouTube, so you've probably watched his videos or heard his voice. And we had a discussion. We were trying to figure out our favorite Zack Snyder project. We did movies and music videos. And at the end of this podcast, I won't tell you exactly how it went, but I found myself fighting for Dawn of the Dead. Now, would it rank as high as it did prior to going back and rewatching it this time around? Not necessarily. I think I've changed my tune just a little bit, but myself and Art, we were really fighting for Dawn of the Dead, and for good reason. I think Dawn of the Dead is an absolutely brilliant zombie movie. Is it a tad bit flawed? I think flawed enough to keep it from being on my top tier. Sure, right? But just because you're not on the awesome tier doesn't mean you're not great. And you're going on the great tier Dawn of the Dead because there's so much greatness that exudes from this film. A stylistic yet contained zombie movie. It, of course, reminds me of going in and playing Left 4 Dead, the mall level, where you're going across the mall and trying to fend for yourself against these zombies. Well, that's exactly what the movie is, because they're in a mall the entire time almost. But it's really that conflict between the group and trying to figure out who you can trust, who you can't trust. Of course, and I don't want to spoil too much. I guess I didn't give a spoiler warning at the beginning of this video, but the pregnancy scene with the little zombie. Oh my God, I never imagined I would see anything like that. It scarred me when I was younger, but that's exactly what you want with a movie like this. Lots of crazy zombie madness, characters making really stupid decisions, but it's part of the fun. It's part of the magic. And his style, the visuals are awesome. The great introduction with, of course, that song that gets stuck in your head after listening and watching. It may actually be one of my favorite Zack Snyder introductions. It's just incredible. And the way that the movie ends, I know it's divisive. I know it's not for everyone, but I actually found myself being really intrigued by it. So, Dawn of the Dead, Zack Snyder, obviously, he knows how to do zombie movies. Spoilers for my Army of the Dead thoughts, but Dawn of the Dead is a great movie, in my opinion. So, for the films with multiple cuts, here's how I'm going to do this. I have watched pretty much all of the cuts of all of his films, and I'm going to go with the definitive cut, the definitive version of that specific film. And for Batman v Superman, I'm going with the Ultimate Edition, because if I didn't go with the Ultimate Edition, I would honestly put Batman v Superman on the okay tier, because I believe there are things that are just not quite there with that theatrical version. But for me, the Ultimate Edition came in. It didn't necessarily right the wrongs of Batman v Superman, so I'm still not the biggest fan of Jesse Eisenberg's Lex Luthor, but it did add in enough for Superman's side of the story. And I get it. You're going to get some arguments saying otherwise, and people's like, no, Austin, it's just 40, 35 extra minutes of nonsense. I disagree. I think that kind of pushes it up enough for me to say I have a good time with Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. And honestly, I had an okay time with Batman v Superman. I find myself defending this movie maybe a bit more than a lot of people, because there's a lot of greatness there. Again, there are definitely some things that don't work. I will readily admit that at the end of the day. And my first experience watching this film was disappointing, because I walked out of the theater saying, I wanted more. And then I watched the Ultimate Edition, and I got a bit more. I got a bit more from Superman's perspective, his side of the story, giving him really a reason to want to go and fight Batman other than just his mother being held captive. And I guess that's reason enough, for sure. But beyond that, there are some things about this Batman figure that have been going on that I believe becomes more relevant with that version. Now, again, if you don't care, if you don't like these movies, you're just going to be like, Austin, you're talking nonsense. And maybe I am. But honestly, it helped my experience quite a bit watching that version of the film. So, the definitive version for me is the Ultimate Edition. I'm going to throw that on the good tier. But otherwise, I think Batman v Superman is an okay movie with that standard edition. Let's move into a movie that came out, found its niche audience. People watched it and said, wow, this is different. One of the most stylistic films, I believe, in history. And it's a movie that just hits the right chord with a lot of people. That is 300. And it may not be a film that I love as much as some people, because I do find the story to be a little bit up and down. Visuals, phenomenal. Story, not as great, but I still think it's good. I think 300 is a good movie, but again, I think I may be a bit lower than a lot of people. I went back and I watched it again a few months ago, and I just didn't find myself maybe being as compelled by the writing as I was when I was a bit younger. But again, what I managed to get out of it was that distinct Zack Snyder style, and the action in this movie is incredible. And the memorable moments. This is Sparta kicking this man into the hole, and so many different things that resonate, and it really is about one man's determination and overcoming the odds of being this small group of people taking on this giant army and telling the story the way that they tell it as this mythical tale, a tale that is so unbelievable yet so epic at the same time. 300 did so much for that genre. and it's really not been able to be replicated. I know they did a sequel that Zack Snyder did not direct, and you could kind of tell that, but also the story in that sequel was not near as compelling as the first. I believe 300 is the definitive movie for the kind of film it was going for, and it may actually be one of the movies that I think of most when I think of Zack Snyder, just because, again, what you're seeing is compelling you so much. But again, 300, a good movie. If you're looking at my tier list right now, I know Zack Snyder's a divisive filmmaker, but this is looking pretty good. And let me start out with this. I've always been a bit down on Watchmen. Not bad, not a movie that, I look past and all this stuff. There are a lot of great things about Watchmen, but I've never felt the way about Watchmen that I felt when I watched the director's cut of this film that adds so much to the movie that really just hits home, and it makes it feel like a slightly different film. There are multiple versions of this movie, but the version that I'm going with here is my favorite version. Now, there is a version that brings in a bit of an animated element, and I did like that, but it doesn't feel maybe as cohesive as I wanted it to. And of course, the theatrical version, which I think is a good movie. I think the theatrical version of Watchmen is a good movie, but I believe the director's cut adds on a little bit more and creates this experience that I never thought I would get with Zack Snyder's Watchmen, and that was a great experience, and I have really come around on this film. I'm talking over the last week because that's when I went back and watched this. It was great, and my wife watched it with me, and she said, why have I never really heard of this film? I mean, she had seen like snippets and images, but we're both sitting here watching, and she's looking at me going, these characters are really complex. I mean, just as complex as a lot of these other superhero films that we've seen as of late, and it throws in this time period, and it throws in some of these political nuggets that I believe takes the story to a new level, and we're talking about the war and nukes and impending doom and destruction, but then such compelling characters in Dr. Manhattan and Night Owl and both Silk Spectres. Now, do I have a few issues with the acting? I think a little bit of it is a tiny bit overdramatic. Carla Gugino's character is a little bit over the top, and there are a lot of moments about this movie that are over the top. Some lines that get delivered, and there's like this awkward pause after them. But I know what Snyder was going for. I know what his intent was. It was to make this like almost operatic, epic beyond belief, and to have those moments that are kind of that wink and nod at the camera. Look, it's always been said that this is the unadaptable story from the comics, and they did it with the television show in a very different way, and I really enjoyed that. But what Zack Snyder did is he took that and tried his very best to translate that one-to-one, of course, with his stylistic vision. And while I don't know if it fully perfected that, I think he did about as good of a job as anybody would have done. I truly believe that. And with this director's version, there's so much good here. I believe my favorite part about this film is Jackie Earle Haley's Rorschach, who is just phenomenal in the movie. His voiceover, and normally I don't love voiceovers like that, was so compelling, and the way that he carries himself, that was a bad impression. But there is so much great about Watchmen that maybe I was sleeping on for all those years. And I will readily admit that. Here we go. Seems to be the most heavily debated Zack Snyder films. That's not true. There are a lot of heavily debated Zack Snyder films. But Sucker Punch is one that I know has its fan base. And back to the podcast that I was on, we even talked about how a lot of people appreciate this film more so than I believe your general audience. And that's fair. I still haven't really come around on Sucker Punch. I don't hate it. I actually maybe enjoyed it a bit more than I expected. And there's something about this style that does kind of speak to me. And there's something about this storyline that is ridiculous and over the top and crazy. And the movie is full of lunacy. It is. Even if you love it, it is. But Sucker Punch has something about it that does kind of make it likable. I'm still not all there. I'm still going to put it on the meh tier, not the bad tier, which I probably would have put it on before rewatch. I'm going to put it on the meh tier because there's something about it that does kind of work, but it doesn't fully get there. So if you don't know what Sucker Punch is, it's probably the only movie that I have to explain. You have this girl who's institutionalized by her stepfather. So she retreats to this reality as somewhat of like a coping mechanism, and she envisions this plan that's going to help her escape this mental facility. The cast is so unexpected. Jenna Malone, Vanessa Hudgens, Carla is back again. Oscar Isaac is in this movie, and John Hamm. The cast is actually really good in this film. But Sucker Punch, I think my issue is the story and how it comes together. You have these two vastly different elements that don't entirely connect, even though, again, you're watching this, and the slow motion with Zack Snyder is very much a fan of, and the style of it, which may be a bit much compared to some of his other films, it works. Again, it's clearly, going to be my least favorite Zack Snyder film. Let's just get that out of the way. But I think there is something about Sucker Punch that does kind of speak to me and tells me, Austin, maybe you should rewatch this again in the future. Maybe it will get better, but it hasn't yet. So, before I get into my final two new Zack Snyder movies, I want to say thank you guys for joining me. Please leave your tier lists down below. And if you enjoy these tier lists, be sure to drop your thumbs up and let me know, what should my next tier list be? Okay, let's get into Zack Snyder's Justice League. And this one is actually tougher than maybe even I expected, because I keep watching it. I don't know why. It's 4 hours long. I can't stop. It's moved its way up my DC list, my Zack Snyder list, and I'm very close to putting it on the awesome tier. I am genuinely closer than I ever thought I would be. I'm still going to put it on great for a few reasons, because there's still a few things I need to get past. A couple of subplots within the film that just didn't quite work for me, and it is a lengthy watch. Again, I don't complain about the runtime, because you could just break it up and watch it an hour in a piece, and what's it matter? What's it matter if you watch it episodically? Who cares? But I just think there's so much great about this movie. I can't believe we were lucky enough to get this version of Justice League, to make me come around on the majority of these characters, to love Ray Fisher as Cyborg, to really start to appreciate this version of Barry Allen, whom I was just like, yeah, he's funny, but he feels like Wally West. And in this film, he's still funny, but the jokes are less awkward, and there is that Barry Allen element, and he has one of the best scenes in the movie. And we all know the scene that I'm talking about. So I'm baffled. I'm baffled that this version of I'm getting pissed off. I need to scale it back just a little bit. That this version of the movie was being held and kept from us. Look, I'm taking a look at this tier list right now. There's no doubt in my mind that I think Zack Snyder is a really, really good director. And I had no clue I was this high on Zack Snyder until I really sat down, laid all of this out. But it feels like his version of Justice League is almost the culmination of everything that makes him great, right? You have compelling characters. You have this huge story that is almost the culmination of the entire it is the culmination of the entire DCEU. And then you have his visual style that is just so top-notch. I believe he's kind of capitalizing on some of the things he learned from Watchmen. And other than, maybe a storyline or two, I think, I'd screw this. Screw it. I rewatched this movie. I've not logged it yet on Letterboxd. I'm going to put it on the awesome tier. Just whatever, man. Look, whatever. I just had such a great time with this movie. And I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me, and they're going to say, that's not the best Snyder movie, Austin. But I was overwhelmed with joy. I've always been a Justice League fan. I grew up with Justice League Unlimited. But there's something about this specific film. Watching it 3 times, why wouldn't I put it on the awesome tier? I've just had the biggest revelation while making this video. I've been on an emotional journey for the last 3 minutes that I never imagined I would be on. And I didn't plan this out. Zack Snyder's Justice League is on the awesome tier. Boom. You done it. I also want to apologize for the voice. I've been hoarse for some reason lately and sniffly. But let's get into Army of the Dead, right? Army of the Dead is one of those films that I was very fearful for, because I'm like, well, he's done the zombie thing before, and he was really great at it. Can he live up to that hype? But is he just going to bring us Dawn of the Dead again? And I can confidently say this is not Dawn of the Dead again. This is a very different movie, a very different story, and something that, kind of felt like it was going to be more contained. And in a way, it is more contained because you're just kind of blocking off all of Vegas and our heroes are trapped. But then they're trapped in this, and I'm not going to spoil anything, they're trapped in this zombie kingdom. And the zombies operate a lot differently than they do in Dawn of the Dead. And these heroes and characters, they operate a lot differently. And this is not me saying it's better than Dawn of the Dead. You'll find out how I feel about that in just a second. But it's just different. And I love that Zack Snyder was able to deliver and bring us something different. So Army of the Dead, for me, is not going on the good tier. It's going on the great tier. I think Army of the Dead is a great Zack Snyder film. He's always done the father-son, father-daughter, mother-daughter storyline in Man of Steel and Watchmen, and he's bringing that to us again with Batista's character, who is much more compelling than I anticipated. Those two are the leads, and those two are kind of the heart of this story. And then you have this team that comes together, this ragtag group of individuals that provides a lot of fun. Is every character fleshed out to perfection? No. Are some of them just there for a very specific reason that you will find out when you watch the movie? Yes, absolutely. And I do have my very harsh nitpicks when it comes to decision-making in this film and kind of logistical things when it comes to the movie. But beyond that, we're here to have a great time. We're here to be entertained. And oh my God. See, now I got to see this in the theater. It's going to be on Netflix, and you guys are going to get to see it that way. But still, seeing it on whatever screen with whatever speakers you have, I have a feeling this is going to deliver, and I don't know how it couldn't deliver on everything you want in a zombie film. Fun, entertainment, visual splendor, and just this crazy time. The introduction was amazing, again, with the incredible intro. Zack Snyder always delivering on that with Watchmen and Army of the Dead and even Justice League, right? But Army of the Dead has this even more distinct visual style than I think any of his films. It's bright, it's colorful, it's bombastic in nature, and it worked. So Army of the Dead is a film that I can't wait for you all to see, and if you've seen it, please let me know, how did you feel about it? We have reached the end. And Snyder, he's done music videos, he's done short films. We're only focusing on feature films, but now we have to rank them. And we're going to start at the bottom with Sucker Punch. Obviously, Sucker Punch comes in at number 9. At number 8, Guardians, Owls of Ga'Hoole, whatever you want to call that movie. Unfortunately, it's on the okay tier, but still not a bad movie. Next up, we have 300 and Batman v Superman, the Ultimate Edition. And I think I still have to go 300 over that just because of the way that it impacted everything. I mean, it was just a monumental film when it came out and some really good elements about it. Again, I think I'm lower than a lot of people, but a good movie nonetheless. Now we're getting into what I believe to be the great stuff. At number 5, I am going to keep Army of the Dead. For now, again, I've seen it once. I've seen Dawn of the Dead 3 to 4 times, but I'm going to put Dawn of the Dead slightly over that. And then above Dawn of the Dead, I'm going to keep Watchmen right there. Remember, we're talking about the director's cut. It's just really hard to put those 3 films higher than Man of Steel because what Man of Steel means to me, and that's why it is now at my number 2. And you'll see that's a bit different than what my DCEU tier list was because I've watched Snyder's Justice League a couple more times since then. I just think there's something magical, there's something special about his version of Justice League that, again, I never thought would happen. And even when we got word of this movie, I said, oh, well, I hope it's good. I never in a million years imagined I would feel this way about it. But I do. I genuinely do, guys. The more I watch the movie, the more I love the movie, and I have to do that. But this is not about me. I guess it is kind of about my thoughts, but this is about you guys, and I need to know, how do you all feel about Zack Snyder? Are you as high on him as a director as I am? Or do you feel a bit lower on some of the films? And again, Batman v Superman, right? The normal version would be lower. So let me know which version of which movie do you like the most, what your list is, and all of those things. I appreciate the contribution. I appreciate the discussion and everything you guys do for me. Hey, stay tuned because I'm considering doing an Army of the Dead spoiler review for tomorrow, since it's dropping on Netflix, as well as some more reviews to come. I also watched Marvel's MODOK, and I believe my review for that is coming on later today. All right, you're the best. Appreciate it. I'll see you soon.